Good evening, Oyasumi, Buenas noches, and Bonsoir. Wherever you are, of course, it probably might not even be evening, but you are now tuned in to the final episode of our 500 favorite songs countdown. Episode 10, the grand finale. We gotta make it special. Before we start this episode, I hope you've enjoyed all other 9 episodes leading up to this as we've counted down some of my favorite different songs, just to give you an idea of, some of the other music that's out there if you've never heard it. Of course, special shout outs always to, all the great supporters, especially my, beautiful, sweet Valentine Shannon. Of course, some of my great, loyal friends like Naomi, Dave, Amanda. If you're watching, shout outs to you as well. And without further ado, we are going to get into the countdown, the last 50 songs. Hope y'all are excited. These are like the big ones for me. And that's why I was like, you know what? Gotta make this epic intro that much more epic. Y'all ready? Here we go. Starting off the countdown right at 50 is Thelonious Monk with his own original composition, Ruby, My Dear. Now, it's a very beautiful piece. It's kind of sad, it's romantic. It's got some very nice textures and tones to it that kind of just takes you on this ride. There's actually 2 versions of this that I'm very fond of. There's the solo version because when Monk plays it just by himself, it really is Monk at his best, and it's beautiful. And it's funny because a lot of people regard Monk as having his own unique style. I mean, that's probably why he was one of only 5 jazz musicians to grace the cover of Time magazine. And you really think about it, people regard him as having that personal approach, which is essential to jazz because anything he played or made himself, it sounded like Monk. If he played other people's stuff, he'd still make it sound like Monk. And if other people played like him, they sounded like Monk too. So he had the Monk style. And also the other version of the song is really good because it has an amazing tenor saxophonist on it. Is the version he did for the Thelonious Monk with John Coltrane album. Check that version out too if you like the original, because that version's really good with the two of them together. 49 goes to the legendary blues rock guitarist and singer Stevie Ray Vaughan and his song Crossfire. Now, this was actually one of the last songs he ever made, sadly, because shortly after this he would die in a helicopter accident. Very tragic. In fact, strangely enough, Eric Clapton was supposed to be on that helicopter and they switched kind of at the last minute. Always weird things like that happen with artists, right? But this piece is really great because he had really brought in like the blues and the jazz influence, like the roots, in a heavy assault because he had brass, he had organs, he had like the double trouble playing at their best, but he also had like fantastic horns on that whole record, which was his final record. It's fantastic. Crossfire, he's just killing the solos. He's singing like with more fire than ever. And it was after he quit drugs, so he was kind of self-conscious. He was nervous he wasn't going to play or be as good without the drugs. But if you really listen to that record, you could see he only got better. He got sharper, more evolved as an artist. And that song proves like Stevie Ray Vaughan probably was the greatest guitar player of all time, if not one of the greatest. 48 goes to the British pop ska singer Lily Allen with her song Alfie. Now, she has so many great songs. I'm actually such a die-hard fan of this singer. She writes really good songs. She has a unique sound, beautiful voice. I saw her in concert, right, when I was in high school, so I've always been a die-hard fan. I actually have, probably they're in the basement still, but I have all the records, like, on CD. I love them. And what makes her style distinct, and she even said this in an interview, is that she always tries to blend like these happy, friendly melodies, but then tie it together with these dark kind of like make you just scratch your head like this seems a little more fucked up than how happy go lucky the melody is for the song, right? But she's fantastic with that. I mean, what Alfie is, it's a song about how her brother is lazy and he's staying in his room smoking weed all day. So it's really funny. It has got that happy, upbeat, catchy melody to it too, right? But it's also got like that dark, sad, and hidden truth in it too. Like you need to, get your life together too, Alfie, right? So apparently he was so bad he took her laptop and threw it in the pool after she made the song. So yeah, it's a masterpiece though. Definitely check it out. 47 goes to the tenor saxophonist take on the traditional standard jazz composition T for Two, which also had Oscar Peterson on piano. Now, there's many versions of this, and I've heard many versions that I've actually liked. The reason I picked Lester's version, oddly enough, is because not only is Oscar Peterson probably one of the greatest pianists ever, like, and playing this composition, it proves it, but Lester really plays some of his greatest tenor sax work ever on this piece. And I would say, like, as a tenor saxophone player myself, I'm a big, huge fan of Coltrane and everything, but I would consider Lester to be my primary and biggest influence. He's the reason I picked up the instrument. It's because he played for Billie Holiday, made her happy, and I wanted to make her spirit happy by playing for her too. So Lester's a great influence, and you hear him play some of the most beautiful, fast, wild, crazy stuff you ever heard. Like, in my opinion, he is as sharp and wit and on point as Charlie Parker was at his prime on that record in particular. So definitely check it out. Number 46 goes to Japanese pop singer, idol, and voice actress Chihara Minori with her song Final Moratorium. Now, she has a lot of really great songs that have won awards and everything, and she's done some phenomenal voice work, and she's terrific. Like, just overall as an entertainer, she's kind of like a 10 out of 10 in every category. But I picked this song in particular because I really love the video. I love the instrumentation of it. It's very rocky, it's futuristic, it's deep. There's a lot of crazy breakdowns throughout it. The lyrics are very deeply written and beautifully poetic, right? And she just looks like the queen of like beauty simultaneously kicking ass in that video. I mean, the laser show, the effects, it's wonderful. I mean, overall, that is actually my favorite song by her. But I would go as far to even say that because I really just like the idea of that song, what the depth of it is that you can't stand still. This is the final time to stand still. After this, move forward and do the most that you can with your life. It's very inspiring, and it hits me here as an artist. It encourages me to keep going on. We're not over yet. 45 goes to the classic hard rock guitarist and singer Jimi Hendrix with his song Purple Haze. Now, yes, I'm a stoner, but that's not why I picked it. Overall, I picked that song because that song really is the epitome of Jimi Hendrix at his best. Like the way the vocals are very howling and bluesy, and the way he's just shredding the guitar. It's like that instantly comes to mind when you think of Jimi Hendrix. Like it's the epitome of him. I mean, I would go as far to say other things that he did, such as like All Along the Watchtower, really, in which case he did it better than Bob Dylan, definitely show like he really was, who he was as far as like one of the greatest guitarists too. In fact, I would say him and Stevie Ray Vaughan, oddly, who I just mentioned, would probably be two of the greatest guitar players to ever live. And Purple Haze, especially because it's that classic 70s stoner jazz, and it's just phenomenal the way he's shredding the guitar on all that. I mean, you couldn't mess with the dude. He was untouchable as far as like the skill of his instrument. Like just like a jazz artist in rock and roll, Jimi Hendrix was that on the guitar. 44 goes to Tatsuro Yamashita with his song Ride on Time from the self-titled, well, from that titled album. Oddly enough, I own a copy of it, and I'm a big fan of the whole record. Like, I love it because he is a great singer, a great songwriter, a great instrumentalist, and great producer. So you really get the best of everything when it comes to a Tatsuro Yamashita record or a song, like everything, right? Right on Time was that song that really established him and showed that he was a musical force to be reckoned with. I mean, now he's gone on to have bigger hits like Christmas Eve, which went #1 internationally, and they call him the man of Japan with the golden voice for that reason, because he really has stood out. Like, everybody's heard the Christmas song. But Right on Time was that first song to break into the top 10 charts in Japan and really show like Tatsuro can groove. I mean, fantastic with the guitar and many other instruments. Great singer, beautiful voice, like almost like wow, you're in awe of his voice. It's like shockingly like perfect, right? And then his production, he's so good. He's produced for other artists and made amazing music for them too. 43 goes to the rock band Yes with their song Roundabout. Now, I first heard this back when I was in elementary school, actually, after I had watched School of Rock, and they talked about Yes, right? Listen to the keyboard solo on Roundabout, Jack Black said to the one kid, Lawrence, who played keyboards, right? So I did, actually, oddly enough, because they don't show you that in the movie, but I was curious, like, what is that, right? That's actually why I started playing keyboards even before the saxophone, like piano and stuff, because I love the idea of that song. The keyboard work is like some of the best you will ever hear on any record. It's phenomenal. I mean, their whole band, they were really good instruments. I mean, like they had cream of the crop as far as like the players of their instruments is what I should say. But you mean you would see some of these people would go on to play in bands like Asia and other bands too. But yeah, like Roundabout, like they had actually a different keyboardist on the time, a guest keyboardist named Rick Wakeman, and he probably was the greatest keyboardist they ever had, and probably one of the greatest on his instrument of all time. I mean, you hear him play with other bands like Black Sabbath, the Strawbs, and then you hear him on Roundabout. You know this man is probably the deadliest man as far as playing a keyboard. In fact, he holds the record for most keyboards on stage during a performance. Number 42 goes to the legendary funk singer and instrumentalist Rick James with his song Ghetto Life. Now, a lot of people are probably surprised they didn't pick Super Freak. Not that I don't love Super Freak. I mean, instrumentally, that shit is bananas. It's crazy. It's great. It's a happy, like, kind of cool 80s party song, like late 70s, early 80s, right? It's a jam. But I picked Ghetto Life because it shows musically how good Rick James was, but on a serious tip, that it wasn't just like all the way the jokes are in like the Chappelle show. They kind of make it seem like Rick James wasn't really that serious of an artist when he was, in fact. In fact, he was such a great artist. Not a lot of people realize this. He had won Grammys, he had won awards, but he also had simultaneously 5 songs at once on the charts, like the top 10 of the charts, like 5 different songs that if he wasn't on them himself, he produced them. So he was great. I mean, he produced for Eddie Murphy, the Mary Jane Girls, you name it. He was great. He was the man. And you hear that he lived a hard life. Yeah, he was involved in drugs. Yeah, he lived wild and crazy, but that was the ghetto life. And that's where you see the root of his struggles, is a song like that. 41 goes to the Dave Brubeck Quartet with Three to Get Ready. Now, I picked this song because, like, Take Five is actually the big main single, which is actually the greatest selling jazz single of all time, right? But, the reason I picked Three to Get Ready is because overall I like the pretty quality of that melody. I remember seeing that in our song books in elementary school when I was learning music originally, and I always thought, wow, that's actually such a pretty melody. And I mean, the way Paul Desmond plays on it, the way Brubeck plays on it, the way Eugene Wright plays on it, even Joe Morello just tying it all together on the drums. I mean, it doesn't have the crazy drum solo like Take Five, but overall, I love Three to Get Ready is probably my favorite song by Dave Brubeck, just because it just has that uplifting da 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 da. Like, you just can't help but like kind of get uplifted hearing it, right? And the temperature, like, the temperature of the track, it's almost like it's fast at points, like it's very hot, it's smooth, it's beautiful, but then at other points it kind of slows down and it becomes slower, more of a colder kind of temperature as far as the musical spectrum, right? And that's actually because the entire record timeout that's on, like Take 5, all different time signatures. 3 to Get Ready is actually 3/4. Number 40 goes to the Japanese pop rock singer, model, and actress Anna Tsuchiya and her song Zero, which she did for the Nana soundtrack. And actually, it was featured on her debut solo album. Now, what makes her incredible is she was such an incredible model, such a great, as far as like, she had the look that she didn't need to smile and still look just breathtakingly beautiful, and that became a thing that like started because of her. A lot of people don't even realize that, but she's a very unique mix because she's half Polish American, half Japanese, right? Like basically Polish American, two quarters divided, and then one half Japanese, right? And then she actually had such a hard career as a model that she had lost feeling in her arm at one point and had to like crawl to the fridge to get food. So she stopped modeling, focused more on music and acting, and she's done some incredible music, solo work, and then even the stuff for Nana. And then she's done some pretty big movies, even like Kamikaze Girl. In fact, I believe a lot of manga images are inspired by her appearance because it's so distinct and beautiful, even among Japanese people. Number 39 goes to the legendary rock band The Beatles with their take and cover on the classic Twist and Shout. Now, apparently, the recording engineer actually advised John Lennon and the rest of the band not to perform that song until the end because it was actually recorded live. They were going to do it all in one take, and this was their debut album. And just because of the time constraints and because of the very powerful, high straining vocals, they didn't want to take the chance of him pushing his voice too far. Because John Lennon had a cold at the time too, right? So because of that, they wanted to just like leave that one for last, and if they weren't going to be able to pull it off, just cut it from the record, right? So that's how they did it, but it actually turned out phenomenal. He almost has more of a wild sounding voice on that record because of it, and it's just that classic. I mean, you hear it in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You almost hear that song and just instantly think too, like, oh shit, yeah. Da, 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 da. Like, there's many other versions of it, but the Beatles just kind of became timeless because of that unique experience around their spin on it. Number 38 goes to Caribbean singer, songwriter, and Grammy winner Headley with her song Fallin' for You. Now, I first heard this song in a movie late one night on TBS, as it was called. They play a lot of movies late one night, and it was like a made-for-TV movie called Getting Played that I heard this song. Actually had a fantastic soundtrack. Some really big, famous actors in it too. Like they went all out for this movie. Actually, oddly enough, an actress named Stacey Dash, who was in this movie, she's actually given me encouragement, praise, and shout outs. I gave her praise for that movie too, and we struck a friendship because of that movie, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that was one of the songs that featured heavily in it, and it was one of those songs I'm like, what is that song? I gotta find that song, right? So oddly enough, I found out the song was on the soundtrack, but it was also featured on Heather's debut album, which she had won a Grammy for. And it's an incredible album. She sings really great on the album. I love this song, obviously, that's why I picked it. Another great song on the record, though, to check out too, if you're interested, is a song called Sunday. Just beautiful, simple, really relaxing, smooth R&B because it's almost like a self-care, a self-love kind of feel because I need to take care of myself Sunday. Just relax, chill. It's nice. I'm Falling for You, that really just captures that whole crazy feeling of falling in love for the first time, which I can relate to having the feelings I have for Shannon right now. Number 37 goes to Asou Natsuko with her song Perfect Area Complete, which comes from the Baka to Testo Shokanju soundtrack. It's this anime which basically means idiots and tests and summon beings to translate to English, right? But it's a really great song because it takes the idea of falling in love and struggling to win like your crush's attention and almost making it like try to pass a test, like to get good grades, like you need to win their heart. And the way it ties into the show, the way it's kind of like a cute romantic spin on wanting to have all the right answers to know how to get like the perfect score, because if you get the perfect score you win their heart, right? Like that's why the perfect area complete, it's almost like using the mathematical equation idea that like to win their heart, it's like you're achieving that perfect sort of mathematical like unity. It becomes like even and everything is all good, right? So it's a really beautiful song. The beat is crazy, wild, and upbeat and funky. It just gets you grooving, right? And I love the show, so yeah, that's why that became a personal favorite for sure. 36 goes to David Bowie and his song I'm Deranged, which is actually featured in the Lost Highway soundtrack, a film directed by David Lynch, one of my favorites, really good. It stars Bill Pullman, um, Robert Blake, a few others too, right? Really good movie. But back to the song, it also appears on one of David Bowie's last albums, which came out in the 90s, called Outside. Now, this whole record is sort of a strange, bizarre, trippy story experience because he's basically giving you a story with the album and the booklet telling you that it's about an art detective who is trying to solve a murder, but as he gets closer to solving the murder with each song, he realizes that he might be partially involved or responsible for it himself or be behind the scenes. Maybe it's all in his head. And it leaves you in like that shrouded mystery, right? I'm deranged is almost that point of realizing, like, I don't really know. I really feel like I've lost my mind. I can't be certain of anything. And that's a feeling I'm sure lots of people can relate to nowadays. I mean, with COVID, with the world kind of going crazy, over in the Middle East, everything. Like, the world's gone crazy, so how can you be sure? And sometimes you feel like, damn, I'm deranged. I just don't know anymore. 35 goes to the Canadian alternative indie rock band Reverie Sound Review and their song One Marathon. Now, I heard this song, believe it or not, in the Canadian show Radio Free Roscoe, or RFR as a lot of fans call it. And it plays right at the end of the show, as well as certain points throughout the series. But right at the end, it kind of leaves you with that sad feeling of nostalgia. Like, people are graduating, they're moving on, they're going to different places. You fall in love, you finally get that first kiss for the first time. It feels like life just comes full circle, and as you grow, you live and you learn. And that song, it's a really beautiful, poetic way of like capturing how we all are on our own path in life, and it's when we cross paths in our like one marathon that's when times are most special. And I actually feel sad that the band struggled so much because they were very talented, they were great, but because they were indie, it took them 7 years to get a record put together because the Canadian government didn't really fund their music that much, right? So they broke up for a while. When they did get back together, they had all moved away, so they recorded separately and put out one other record. But after that, they just retired and broke up from then on. Sad. 34 goes to the Japanese pop group Dream with their song My Will, which was actually the first ending theme of Inuyasha. And I really love that song. Like, that's actually what stayed with me after Inuyasha. The show was great. It was the first episode. I'd never seen it before. There was a lot of hype. A few kids had talked about it who were kind of what they called anime nerds, right? And I'm like, okay, what is this Inuyasha thing, right? That's what I really like. I'd already loved Cardcaptor Sakura, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, Digimon, you name it, right? And then that came out. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then it was great, but then the music at the end, when that ending theme song came out, it was so beautiful. The lyrics, the will to go on, even if I don't see you every day, but just feeling so deeply in your heart, like you just want to be with that person, and that's what keeps you going. Is that hope that someday you'll be happy in love, everything will be complete, and it's your pride, your will, fighting for your love that gives you your greatest strength and empowerment, right? And that's something, I'll put it this way: when I'm on edge and I'm anxious and nervous, even about my own situation with love nowadays, it's something, I sit there and I think, wow, that song really is the epitome of how I'm feeling this moment. 33 goes to the classic progressive rock band Genesis with their song That's All. Now, they have lots of great songs. It was actually kind of a close toss up between that and Land of Confusion, because that's a really good song, too. I picked That's All because there's almost like a deep simplicity to that is timeless. Like, it just feels like that's one song, even if you weren't the greatest Genesis fan, you could throw on and probably everybody would, jam out, bob their head, and dig it, because Phil Collins sings wonderful on it. Plays actually some great drums on that shit. Like, he actually said in the experience making that song, he was purposely trying to play like Ringo Starr from the Beatles, which is an interesting fact to know. But yeah, the way the keyboard solos are on that song, the way the guitar solos are, it's just phenomenal. It's actually what I would say, what really shows how good Genesis were as a band. It's one of those songs you imagine they're gonna play on the radio, like "Follow Me" and "Land of Confusion," but that one is just a masterpiece to me. Like, you really can't get no better than That's All. It epitomizes that melancholy of a heartbreak. Like, that's all, it's over, and trying to move on from there. Number 32 is Kiyono Yasuno with her song Rocket Beat, which actually comes from the new Card Captor Sakura series, The Clear Card. And I really love this song because when I heard it, I love the guitar solo. I love the way it's so upbeat. The lyrics are beautiful. They're also very poetic. They're deep. They're hard hitting. Like, I love a lot of songs like that, especially with Japanese music. The masters of that. But this song does have its own sentimental and sort of like, personal backstory to this. I had watched Clear Card right when it was coming out, and this was right around the time I started dating not my ex, but my ex before my ex, Ayane, and I was really deeply in love with her. And we actually said that was our song. She would sing it to me, I would sing it to her, we'd sing it together, and we'd watch Clear Card together. And it was a happy time. Like, it's one of those times that, as sad as things ended after, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it was a very happy experience to even have lived, like, to have spent that special time with somebody from so far away. We both bonded and singing the same song in Japanese, having a great old time. You couldn't replace that or trade that for the world. And Rocket Beat forever holds that memory, because that was our song in my mind. She had her song for us, and I had mine, but Rocket Beat was mine. 31 goes to the actress and singer. Yes, she sings too, Alyssa Milano, with her song What a Feeling. Now, oddly enough, her music never did very well in North American and like European audiences, but it did very well in Japan. It actually sold, a lot of her records sold gold there, which means 500,000. Now, this is one of those songs, realizing she was a singer and kind of stumbling upon this discovering fact, like, I was like, oh shit, because I was a pretty big fan of Charmed and some of her other work. She's a Canadian actress, so I'm like, support a fellow Canadian. I was like, I want to hear what this music sounds like, right? It's very 80s poppy. It sounds like Japanese pop, probably because she got a lot of praise over there for that. But it's very beautiful music. It's actually very good. And What a Feeling, I actually feel like that was her deepest song, because she said she wrote it when her little brother was born, because she was excited. Like, to actually have a sibling, like to share life with, right? And then she also kind of makes it sound a bit like a love song. It's got some great keyboards, bass, drums, and great horns. Like, it really sounds like it's up there with like Japanese pop, and in a good way, musical quality standards wise. So yeah, What a Feeling. It's a jam. You're probably like, wow, I didn't even know she sang, but it's legitimately good. Number 30 goes to Japanese rock psychedelic singer, songwriter, producer, and composer Yasushi Ishii with his song, When You Start the War, brackets, fight with arrows, spears, and swords. Now, this song actually appears on the soundtrack of Hellsing Ultimate, as well as bits and pieces throughout the original Hellsing series, which he did the original Hellsing soundtrack and contributed the full version of that song to the Hellsing Ultimate soundtrack. Now, he's a really great singer, unique voice, very bluesy, psychedelic sounding, beautiful at times, very unique, very mystical sounding with his music. He plays a lot of instruments. He's a really good arranger and composer and producer. And this song really shows him at his best. In fact, I actually would hope to see him become a more successful star just because of how talented and wonderful his music is, even on the underground scene. But yeah, like that song, it goes hard, trust me. 29 goes to the old school MC with his song, The World Is Yours. Of course, I'm talking about Nas. Nas, of course, dropped his debut album, Illmatic, which is considered one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. This becoming the staple sort of theme song for the record. I mean, Pete Rock produced it and contributed the chorus. The beat is wonderful with that old jazzy piano, which, oddly enough, jazz um, influence and roots are no coincidence with Nas because his dad was actually a cornet player and a jazz musician long before Nas even got into music. He didn't have to. He could have just went to college, but he chose to make his own way with music. Oddly enough, his dad plays cornet solo on the song "Life's a Bitch" from Illmatic, and he sang on the song with him later. But yeah, like that jazz roots, you hear it in "The World Is Yours," and it's also the Scarface epitome of anything you want, anything you think of, no matter how big it is. If you could dream it, you can have it. The world is yours. And like the way, like Pete Rock's just saying, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. Like they're taking it, they're making it theirs. And that's like one of the first old school songs where I was like, you know what? That's a masterpiece. And I even believe still to this day, Nas has never made a record quite as good as Illmatic or that song. 28 goes to the Japanese pop duo Seesaw with their song Onani Isho Data Numi. Now that means although we were always together, as it would translate. Um, the interesting thing about that song is it's used in the Gundam Seed soundtrack. I actually heard it late one night catching the anime at the end before Inuyasha the first time. But it had a beautiful song, like in that ending animation and theme, like it just resonated with me. I was like, wow, that's a beautiful song. And then I found out they were a duo. Um, Two very cute ladies. One actually became very successful as a solo performer. The other did some kind of behind the scenes work, did a solo record, and did a lot of backup work. But they did reunite when they made the Gundam Seed Destiny series and make another song for that. So I think it's just on and off their relationship. But when they are together, they are incredible, as the song might suggest too. And it's very beautiful. It's almost that romance of, although I lost you, I'll never forget just how special it was when we were together. And it's touching and it's deep. 27 goes to the alternative indie band Blues Traveler with their song Run Around. Now, I heard this in the most weirdest way. It was when I was watching this movie that an old high school friend of mine named Buddha recommended to me. And I actually watched this movie called Spun with him. And I loved the soundtrack to it. It was a really random, weird movie. Had some great acting and a crazy story. Uh, Brittany Murphy was in it, John Leguizamo, Mickey Rourke. It was good and everything. It was a wild movie about meth and shit, though. It was crazy. Actually, the director of Madonna's video, Ray of Light, directed that movie. So, but that soundtrack was amazing, and it had some really great songs. And that was one of them that really like stuck with me. Like I was like, wait, what was that song they were playing? It was very upbeat and hopeful, especially in such an odd situation as what was going on in the film, right? So I looked it up and I was like, oh shit, that's Blues Traveler. And sadly, that was their biggest hit, and they had like a few other hits that like did okay and did equally as good, but they kind of broke up and didn't really go very much farther after that. But I've heard that song on the radio, and every time I hear that, it's almost that like feeling that life is a runaround sometimes. Like you're going all over the place, and it's almost like that quest in the Wizard of Oz, trying to get like the courage, the heart, and the brains. You know. Number 26 goes to Ri A Fu with her song I Want to Go to a Place, which is also featured on the Gundam Seed Destiny soundtrack. Now, I love this song because it's actually a mix of English and Japanese, half English, half Japanese. That inspired me with some of my songs. She's actually mixed, half American, half Japanese. Very beautiful lady, beautiful voice, great songwriter. It's a very calming tune. It kind of makes you feel like if you were in love with somebody and you were really happy, it would be like being in paradise, being in the most special, magical place and feeling like total bliss. Like you just want to go to that place. It's like sometimes you're not sure. Sometimes it feels like your heart and your mind are playing tricks on you. But if you could go to this place, everything would be at peace. Everything would be special. And you wouldn't have to worry anymore ever again. And, you know, I can't say that I've often felt like love could really take you to that place, but recently and a few times in the past, I feel like it did. And love is probably the only truly special thing that can take you to the place that she sings of. Well, we are now at the halfway point. 25, John Coltrane, his song, Naima. Now, Naima is a very beautiful composition, a very traditional, almost jazz standard ballad kind of sounding piece. And he composed it for his ex wife. It's kind of got a sad, lonely, broken hearted quality to it. Now, he actually used an effect on the tenor sax, which makes it very difficult to play. As simple as the tune is, the chord progression, the notes, he's extending certain parts that it'd be very difficult to duplicate that naturally on a tenor saxophone. In fact, that's why there's actually another take of Naima where he did it naturally, but he had to use the pedals to create the one that was used on the record for Giant Steps, which is my personal favorite. Now, with that piece too, it's interesting because the band struggled to play a lot of the stuff he used for Giant Steps the first time, he played it more wild and free when he did it the first time. But when he plays it more simple, it's actually got a more moving, sadder quality to it. And he actually had some really great musicians playing with him on that song because they had just worked on, many of them had worked on Kind of Blue with Miles Davis and him just before recording that too. 24 goes to Maaya Sakamoto with her song Clear, which is used for the Clear Card soundtrack before. Now, earlier I was mentioning that Ayane and me kind of had our own unique songs as we watched the show and like how we related our own romance to one another. Like with her, it was um, Clear actually, and with me it was Rocket Beat. But the reason I put Clear is because every time I hear that, knowing how much she loved that song, knowing how happy she was just to sing to me in that time, it'll forever hold a special memory in my heart. And it really is a beautiful song about like being unsure, being confused about love, like almost feeling like you're going off into the unknown. The same could be said with the show, like Sakura's starting to date Shaoran in the show. She doesn't know where it's gonna go, what it's gonna lead to, but it's a happy, magical uncertainty and the unknown feeling of first new love, right? And that's something I could relate to right now, and it's something I could relate to back then. So, for the timeless effect, that's why I had to give it number 24. 23 goes to the classic NWA member, rapper, and actor Ice Cube with his song Today Was a Good Day. Now, the reason I picked this song was because he's got a lot of great classic jams as a hip hop artist. He's really one of the original staples. You look at how significant and important NWA's music was culturally to the art of hip hop, using it as a stand to actually make a statement. Ice Cube is really a pioneer. But this song kind of takes it to a whole nother sort of end of the spectrum where he's more laid back and he's telling you about the struggles of life, hoping for a good day each day. And because of the real, sad, brutal honesty, the optimism and the hopefulness and the catchiness to the beat with the Isley Brothers sample in the background, not a lot of people know it, but they use footsteps in the dark to make the beat. And then the way he's like, today was a good day, like that hopeful melancholy of optimism. Like, it's not always a good day, because he'll say like, today I didn't even have to use my AK. I gotta say it was a good day. Like, if he had to use his AK, it wouldn't be so good, right? And then, he tells you things like that, right? And you get the feeling like every day is a struggle for him, so it kind of makes you learn to inspire, like, others and yourself, appreciate the good days when you get them. 22 goes to the legendary soul R&B singer and pianist Brenda Russell with her song A Little Bit of Love. Now, I picked this song because I just love the melody of this, the way it was structured, the way she sings it, that hopeful optimism of wanting to start again, find a new love, even though it's hard. It's something she could really relate to, because right as she was making that album, her husband left her for another woman. She was kind of left like empty-handed in the middle of all the things. He jacked all the assets. She had to kind of build her own life from scratch all over again. She was very heartbroken. But from that pain and misery, you get some of her best music. That whole record, her self-titled debut album, is great. A Little Bit of Love is really Brenda at her most honest, her most vulnerable, like trying to pick up the pieces of her life. That beautiful, simple piano accompaniment, the chorus kind of inspiring her in the background to keep going. And it's like you would hear these samples go on to get used in songs by like Mac Miller and Big Pun even. So the melody has a timeless quality of lost love and hoping for a new love to start, or at least for somebody to like you. 21 goes to the Japanese pop diva queen Maria Takeuchi, who is actually Tatsuro Yamashita's wife, and he's the producer of this song, Plastic Love. An absolute jam, as some people describe it. And indeed, it is a masterpiece. From the hard hitting club drums, um, the smooth bass that just engulfs the track, but yet lays back enough to let everything else do its thing. The horns, the guitar solo Tatsuro plays fantastic. Her vocals, her lyrics about not wanting to fall into the material pressures of society, to find real love and not just be a vampire at night going around and seeing everybody else enjoying what you deep down in your heart really desire, and something Maria could relate to. As she was making the album Variety that this appeared on, she had gotten pregnant with Tatsuro, they had gotten married, and as the album suggests, variety, a lot of songs, a lot of things were going on, right? And it's like, this song didn't actually end up becoming a hit at the time. It charted like number 86 or something because she couldn't do the promotion at the time. She was pregnant, right? But then, as this song resurfaced on the internet as sort of one of those memes later on, it's now gone on to get over 50 million views. In fact, it's just insane because for a song that was not considered a hit, it over time has become such a hit that it's like people who don't really know Japanese music will hear that song and just love it instantly. Number 20 goes to the classical composer and pianist Eric Satie with his composition Gymnopédie Number 1. Now, there's actually three gymnopédies, which is sort of like if you were looking at like a sketch artist, like looking at the same object from different angles, sketching it. That's what the gymnopédies would be like. It's sort of like a late 18th century sort of technique composers did. Now, I prefer the Gymnopédie Number 1 just because it has sort of the most pretty sound to it, I find, of the three. It still has that touch of melancholy, but it's the most recognizable, it's the most pure, I find. And it really shows that even with the simple, gentle touch of the melody, it remains beautiful and timeless even to this day. I mean, it's been used in everything from Buckley's commercials to even Cadbury used it in the commercial, right? But Eric Satie was a very odd, eccentric artist, and he had a very unique understanding that an artist should live for himself. So he himself was a huge influence to me. I love his work. I actually would consider him my personal favorite of the classical composers because he epitomizes that an artist should live for their work. That's why he did every form of art. He drew, he painted, he took photos, he played music, and he even was the first classical composer to score a film and act in it, which nobody had ever done at that point. Number 19 goes to the Japanese composer and pianist Ryuichi Sakamoto with his song Thousand Knives. Now, the thing is, Ryuichi is actually Ryukin, which is actually from the island of Okinawa, which was its own country at one point. It was actually after World War II that, because it had temporarily been occupied by America during the war, that when it basically was resolved, they basically gave it to Japan. So they kind of got screwed out of their own land. It just became part of Japan, right? But that's where he's from originally. And he's a really great pianist. He actually was the first Japanese artist to have a number one with just a pure instrumental. He's acted in movies with David Bowie. He's done a lot of great things. Sadly, he's now struggled with cancer twice. And I don't know if he's going to make it twice, but I wish the best for him because he was planning a world tour before all that. In fact, when COVID started, he did a concert to benefit the isolated, like entertain us while we're trapped in our homes. So just sad that he had to get struck with cancer while he was working on some new music at home and everything, right? But yeah, listen to Thousand Knives. Really great masterpiece. It was his first solo record. It really shows just how great of a composer as well as an instrumentalist he was. Number 18 goes to the Wu-Tang Clan with their song Severe Punishment. Now, I picked this song by Wu-Tang Clan because there is so many songs. There is lots of great different songs, and there's so many members that appear on different songs because there's actually not that many masterpiece songs or nothing where like every single member is on it, right? But I will say, because I have certain specific favorites because of their lyrical styles and overall abilities that I see in them that I find influences on myself, I love Severe Punishment the best because my three favorites personally are on that. GZA delivers phenomenal verse. He's actually the leader of the clan. You God is great on that, which he didn't get that many chances to shine because he had gotten in trouble with the law, same as Master Killa on the first album, right? So they got to appear on a lot more of the second album, and this was one of the songs where they really just nailed it. Master Killa kills it. He had my favorite verse on the song. GZA rips it, and then so does You Got. And then you also had RZA and Raekwon, just kind of the icing on the cake. The beat is great. The samples of Punishment, they're just excellent. It's a masterpiece, and it's just it's sad that like because certain members have become more popular, some of the more lyrically skilled I find don't often get the spotlight. But that's a song where all the lyrically mastered rappers get to show their skills. 17 goes to the Japanese pop duo Take and Tsubasa with their song from Inuyasha, One Day, One Dream. Now, it's a beautiful song, not only because of like the harmony of the two guys singing with the great instrumentation backing them, really fits the animation of the show, but it has that hopeful optimism that even if things aren't going right in your life right now, like with love or other sort of struggles, that one day, as long as you keep dreaming, they could reach the sort of happiness and peaks of the goals that you wish to achieve. They could all come. So you got to keep dreaming. And it's an inspiring song to never give up on your dreams. And they also did another interlude song for the show when Kikyo was actually being, well, partially destroyed by Naraku. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but we'll say that happened. And at that point, they played another song during that, right? It's a really great song, but this is unfortunately, the only song that officially got used as a theme for the soundtrack. And I would definitely love to hear more from this duo in the future, just because you hear this song, you could tell these two are magic when they make music together. One day, one dream, right? Number 16 goes to the old school rapper and songwriter, the DOC, with his song From Ruthless to Death Row. Now, the DOC rose originally as a member of the Fila Fresh crew, with songs like I Hate to Go to Work, and then he started working with Dr. Dre and NWA. He wrote songs for Easy Does It and Straight Outta Compton. He rapped a bit on that. And then he did his solo record, No One Can Do It Better. It actually did very well, it went platinum. But then shortly after that, he was in a car accident when he was very tired one night. He basically went through the windshield, crashed into a tree, and it crushed his larynx, making him sound like this whenever he talks. So, after he recovered from everything, he could never rap the same. So he wrote songs for like The Chronic, 2001, Doggy Style with Snoop Dogg, but he couldn't rap as good, so they could only give him little bit parts like Serial Killer on Doggy Style with Snoop Dogg, right? But then eventually, Dr. Dre wasn't paying him, he got angry, screwed him over, so he made the song From Ruthless to Death Row and a few others and released the album Helter Skelter, which was planned to be Dr. Dre's album with Ice Cube, but the deal fell through when he left off Death Row Records, and Ice Cube just didn't want to do it anymore either. So the DOC, not getting paid, took the songs and he made Helter Skelter his own. And then he did this song telling the story about how he gotten screwed over. And even though his voice wasn't the same, it's lyrically the DOC was at his best. He was more deep, more raw, emotional than ever. And the melody is beautiful with the production from Erotic D. It's just as good as Dr. Dre's production in some ways. So you really get to hear a vulnerable DOC, even past his prime, but in some ways even better than in his prime. And he's hard on himself personally about the music. I think Helter Skelter was phenomenal, and that song especially. Number 15 goes to the Japanese kawaii pop metal band Baby Metal and their song Karate. Now, this was actually a huge phenomenon at the time when it came out because they were one of the first Japanese artists to go number one with their album, their second album, Metal Resistance, on like American charts to reach number one, have the best selling album, and then Karate also managed to make it to number one on the charts as well. They also had another song from the album that went to number two, which I really love, called The One. But yeah, Karate was that anthem because the chant that they say through it is an old Japanese thing that even Goku used in Dragon Ball Z, the original Japanese dub, Seiya Soya, which basically it's a chant to like ha ha ha, like kind of hype yourself up, empower yourself, inspire yourself from within, right? So that's what the song is overall about. It's about even when you feel most broken, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever you're going through, whatever test you're trying to pass, whatever training you're trying to do to be stronger, just keep fighting on and don't give up because that's what makes you your most strong. Number 14 goes to the CEO and rapper Jay-Z with his song Regrets. Now, this record came out on his album Reasonable Doubt, which was released in 1996. It's actually out of print, which I'm lucky to have a copy. It's sort of like a treasured keepsake at this point. But yeah, the whole record was phenomenal because it was Jay-Z at his most underground, rawest, and vulnerable. He was telling the story of the hustler trying to come up. He was starting his own label, trying to do it from the ground, not giving to the pressures because they were screwing him. He had talent, he had great music, but nobody gave him a deal because it wasn't mainstream. He had all this slang and coded metaphors, right? But he was great. He knew exactly how to like tell his story in a very crazy, unique way. In fact, I think his lyrics were the best on that whole record. Now, what makes a song like Regrets, like the peak of the record too, is it's his most deep. Yeah, he's got to hustle. Yeah, he's got to sell drugs and do these terrible things, kill people in the streets and do all that to like make a living and survive to get the money to build his record label because he's got to get out of the life. He doesn't want to live that way before. Like it all like basically comes crashing down on him and he knows like it could at any moment. Even when he gets out of it, there's still going to be the regrets like, oh, I did that bad stuff, but I did what I had to do. Like you got to learn to live with your regrets because it's the only way I'm ever going to get out of this like ghetto, this situation I'm in, and make a better life for myself. So it's definitely his deep and most inspiring song, in my opinion. Number 13 goes to Stone Temple Pilots with their song Plush. Now, they were an alternative grunge band in the 90s. It was a very competitive era. They had to compete with Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Green Day. So they ought to get overlooked, but they were really masters of their time. And they credit Scott Weiland as having this unique, haunting voice, which he did work with Velvet Revolver and other bands too. And sadly, he passed away a few years ago. But that whole haunting quality, you hear that on Plush. They had their own unique psychedelic sound to the melody, but the lead singer in the band had read this article about a girl had been discovered by these dogs, but she had been killed and raped, and nobody knew who she was or where she was from because she was from somewhere far away or something. So it's just kind of sad, and it touched the band enough to make this sort of song about like, will they ever find what they're looking for, like, really, because it's like, even though they found the body, they still don't know who she is. And it's a very deep song that just kind of makes you stop and think about life, like sometimes you really just never know. 12 goes to the Japanese dancing queen, pop diva, and singer herself. She's also a great drummer, keyboardist, and guitarist, singer and songwriter, Chisato Moritaka, with her song, The Miha. Now, this song has different versions, and it was actually a song that became really big for her. It established her as sort of like the premier Japanese female artist of the time because she danced really big in the video with all these cool new special effects for their time. And the song came about because after making a few songs with songwriters for the label, they basically said, okay, your singles aren't doing that well. Like, try writing your own stuff, right? So, as sort of a test, like, oh, okay, I'll show these guys I'm not like the rest. I'm unique. I want true love. I'm this wild, crazy character that's not like anybody around me. And the way she captures that in song, it's very beautiful. It's wonderful. It's inspiring to just be yourself. And it's that catchy 80s Japanese pop groove with its infectious rhythm, that catchy lyrical refrain, Ojo sa ma janai no watashi ta da no miha, and you just instantly get sucked in. And that's exactly how she did it. And so many more hits would come and come. And as of nowadays, she's actually a Japanese television personality. So she always did very well for herself, indeed. Number 11 goes to Jerry Mulligan with his composition, City Lights. Now, there's two versions of this, the 1963 and the 1965. I like both, but I do absolutely prefer the original 1963. Now, what made Jerry so fresh is he was a great saxophone player. He could play all sorts of different saxophones, but because he was so big, he was such a big guy, he could handle playing the magnificent baritone saxophone, and he became one of the really only famous masters for it because it's such a big, massive instrument. It's difficult for anybody to handle and enough to master. And I mean, you would see him go on to play with legends like Ben Webster and Chet Baker, even Billie Holiday, which he did a fantastic performance with on live television for her song Fine and Mellow. Now, this cat, because he was so big, he could play it like a natural, but that's what a lot of people don't even realize is he was truly the only master that ever gets recognized for his instrument as well. And you hear City Lights, the way he plays that low, beautiful tone with all the other band backing him. It's just like a match made in heaven if you have him on the baritone saxophone. Number 10 goes to Canadian rapper, old school MC, radio host, and DJ Buck 65 with his song 463. Now, this song is just slamming because, this is one of Canada's own. This is actually the reason why I became a rapper myself. As I was a kid one night, I was sitting there playing with Legos. It was late and I was watching Teletoons. And they randomly put on the music video for 463, and I remember stopping my Legos and just being fixated on the video. Like, the video is great because he is playing a baseball game and all the members of the teams are himself, and he's telling this story about like trains and Father Bob and growing up in the country and hearing killers with whistles and stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, this doesn't sound anything like rap the way everybody had told me at the time, because I was a young kid. Everybody's like, oh, they're gangsters and talking about drugs and killing people and all this. And I was like, well, this guy doesn't sound anything like that. And that like opened my mind, and I was just amazed. And I honestly believe that's the reason I became a rapper. And because that became Buck 65's signature tune, like his biggest hit, the one that kind of stood the test of time, up there with Wicked and Weird when he reached his peak. Like, that's why I'm like, yeah, 463 forever. Number 9 goes to the legendary jazz singer and pianist Nat King Cole with Unforgettable. Now, the song was originally done by himself with an arrangement by Nelson Riddle. It was aired on a show, and then he went on to record it many other times. He actually did a great job of it with a whole band where they had vibraphones and everything. But the most famous version that really seems to suit it best is the duet he did with his daughter when it was re-recorded after his passing. Basically, unfortunately, as great as he was a very loving, gentle, sensitive artist, a fantastic pianist who played with legends like Lester Young and Buddy Rich, but unfortunately, he passed away from lung cancer because he smoked a lot and overworked, right? But his daughter, Natalie Cole, became a singer, so she ended up, when she made her album, remixing it and basically making it into a duet. Now, the two of them together, it's just magic on a record. It's one of those times when, okay, taking something old and remaking it with something new really worked out beautifully. And that's why the song won a Grammy. I mean, that really showed, too, that even in a future generation, Nat King Cole was still unforgettable. Number 8 goes to Takako Mamiya with her song Midnight Joke, or Mayunaku no Joke. Now, this song actually is released on the album Love Trip, and it was a flop in its time. She's not really that well known other than the recent media rediscovery. Once it basically got resurfaced online, people started buying it like gangbusters. An original album pressing of it sells for thousands, hundreds of dollars and whatnot, like a lot of money. And it's crazy because the record is phenomenal. It has some great musicians that play with people like Tatsuro Yamashita's band, Cassiopeia. The brass section went on to play with Cowboy Bebop, and even the pianist, he was a composer who worked on Kingdom Hearts soundtrack. So, and the sound engineer directed The Grudge. The whole album is a masterpiece. Now, you have all these people behind the scenes working with it, and that's why a song like Midnight Joke, which actually got played as sort of like a single at clubs in Tokyo in the late 80s, even though the album was a flop, that's how it survived and resonated over time. Sort of that sweet melancholy of Takako's mysterious, alluring qualities, her jazzy, bluesy voice, haunting throughout the night in the lonely melancholy, like is my love just a joke, driving alone, sad, feeling like, oh, I'm just a fool. They're not the one for me. I'm just being used on the side. Everything the way it has that just perfect midnight melancholy city pop old Japanese vibe. It's just magic on a record. And I will tell you, Love Trip is one of my favorite records, probably, that I've ever heard. I have a copy of it. It was expensive to get, but I got one. But the final note to conclude this on would just be that if there was one song to pick off that record, it would definitely be Midnight Joke. 7 goes to the R&B singer and actress Brandy with her song Sunshine. Now, this song actually came out on her debut album when she was still younger and she was doing the Moesha show. Now, in my opinion, this was actually Brandy at her best. She was still very sweet, innocent, growing up, maturing, and she really still had that beautiful, incredible voice which she's known for at a young, early age. And you hear that. And plus, because there's no sort of like ulterior motives or other sort of emotions in the picture, like, you get the quality of innocence with this beautiful melody that it's almost like anybody could listen to it and they would probably agree, wow, that sounds beautiful. And it takes you on a trip back in time every time you hear it, because it has that essential 90s R&B vibe. And I mean, once she started working with Darkchild, like the producer, she was able to make a lot of magic. She became a great actress. She went on to do things like How I Met You Last Summer 2 and The Game, and many other great songs, including Aphrodisiac, which was actually a tough one because I was going to honestly pick that for number 7 at first, but I decided, you know what, I'll go with Sunshine because it retains its purity even after all this time. Number 6 goes to the legendary pianist, composer, and singer Thomas Fats Waller in Ain't Misbehavin'. Now, this is one of the most beautifully written love songs of all time. Like, some people might sit there and think, oh, Fats was just that funny man behind the piano. But he was a master of stride. He was actually a genius as a composer, a child prodigy. He actually once composed 10 songs for 10 hamburgers. Probably not the smartest business idea, but he was genius because at a young age he could do it and make it harmonically sensible on paper. So you hear him play that composition, he will play it better than anybody else could play it most of the time, just because he was a master pianist. And the way he sings it, it's his song, he played it. Andy Razoff wrote the lyrics. It's a beautiful, nostalgic love song and a ballad about like not wanting other people, saving yourself solely for one individual that you love, not playing games because that person is more special than anybody. Like, you're sure you know them, you want to spend all your time and days with them. And that's something I feel all the time lately, ever since I met Shannon, being honest. So, ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. Number 5 goes to Louis Armstrong with his song, What a Wonderful World. Now, this was a tough one too to choose because I was honestly thinking of putting Hello Dolly, but I'm like, you know what? Overall, What a Wonderful World does it best. I would say Hello Dolly in one respect. I would definitely recommend too for anybody who likes it, Louis Armstrong, and is interested, because yeah, he plays great trumpet too. He was actually the greatest trumpeter of all time. It's considered and widely known because he could play things even in the later years of his life, like Hello Dolly, that no trumpet player could play as good or as perfect as he did, all on purely instinctive and natural knowledge. He was a master, right? So you really sit there and you think about it. That's why they called him Satchmo. That's why they called him Pops. He was the father in modern music. The idea of that singer being himself, coming up there, singing you a song, being brutally honest with that gravel and that melancholy. What a wonderful world. You hear that? And that is cementing the legacy of a genius, a man that had done nothing but spend his whole life making people smile. And he had to deal with segregation, he had to deal with depression. He worked so hard, he had lots of health problems, he did movies, he did so many things, and it was so many ups and downs. But what a wonderful world it was just to have Louis Armstrong the whole time. And that's why I'm like, you know what? He really was probably one of the greatest artists to ever live. And that will forever be one of the greatest songs because it shows it. Number 4 goes to the Japanese pop singer Hitomi Shimatani with her song Dragonfly. Now, this is the song that really got me into it because I first heard her doing the song Angelus for the Inuyasha soundtrack. It's one of the later opening themes, right? And I love that song, so it kind of made me think, oh, I wonder what else she does. So I looked it up one day and I stumbled upon Dragonfly. I fell in love instantly with her music. Like, the way it had the guitar solo, the crazy 80s new wave keyboards, this song about making the most of your time. Like, because think about the idea of a dragonfly, it only lives 24 hours and then it dies, right? So while you're here, make the most of your time, love, make an appearance, like be special, be magical, and when you're gone, at least it will be for something. So, and it's just kind of a beautiful approach and spin on the idea, right? And the way she sings it, she's just one of the greatest. In fact, she was actually such a great singer and dancer. She actually auditioned for avex when she was just finishing high school, and didn't even ever need to go to college because she was that good. From there, the hits just kept piling on and piling on, and then bam, like it led all the way into the Dragonfly era. Which you hear that song, I guarantee y'all be blown away just because that song, it's magical, it's catchy, it's groovy, but it rocks too. It's everything all in one. Number 3 goes to Louis Jordan, the father of rhythm and blues and the grandfather of rock and roll, with his song, Let the Good Times Roll. Now, what's great about this is it's a song that everybody's heard. Everybody knows, almost everybody would agree. It's a great song, it's catchy, it's funny. It's just that feel good, perfect party music. And yet, so many people don't even know who Louis or Louis Jordan is because he sold a lot of records. He actually sold, it's estimated, about 4 million in his time. You know, lots of great songs. He did movies. He was actually the first black artist to fund his own films because back then it was really hard to do that. And he actually achieved things that nobody else had achieved. He had done duets with the likes of Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, and even many songs with Ella Fitzgerald when he started out in the same band with her, Chick Webb's band. But yeah, he's just often looked and often discredited and not appreciated the way he should be. When it's like this is a man who people like Chuck Berry and Ray Charles and James Brown openly admitted, like, this is the guy we got our style from, because he developed jazz and took all the like boogie woogie and blues and like kind of all the music that was like kind of churning in the different pots, kind of sampled a bit of all of it, and that's what we see later become the development of rock and roll itself. It's like they often make the joke in Back to the Future, like Marvin calls his cousin Chuck up, like, "Oh, gotta hear this song." He's playing Chuck Berry's song, "Johnny Be Good." The irony, right? But realistically, if Louis Jordan was Marty McFly, that's how you would look at how realistically he got the idea, because the intro for a Louis Jordan song called "Ain't That Just Like a Woman," um, Carl Hogan played it, and Chuck Berry admitted he got his idea for Johnny Be Good from that. Lastly is the great Lady Day herself, Billie Holiday, and her song Strange Fruit. Now, it had been recorded several times. I prefer the original recorded version that she did with Commodore Records because she was signed to Columbia, but the song is about lynchings, basically an unfair practice used against African Americans in the segregated days back then, right? Especially down south, right? And how it should be stopped. Um, it's not that there's anything wrong with her singing it, it really was a protest song, but the label didn't want to back it, promote it, they thought it was too touchy. So a Jewish producer decided to produce it on his label, Commodore Records, right? And his name was Milt Gabler, and through that, it actually became the equivalent of a top 10 selling record. The producer himself said it could have been because the B side was fine and mellow, but because of her haunting way of singing, like, that stuff ain't right, that stuff needs to stop. We need to treat each other more fairly, not like fruit on tree that we can just pluck or leave to hang and rot in the sun. It's like, it's very powerful, and she was actually targeted for the rest of her life after making the song, as tragic as it is. The Narcotics Bureau, who was run by a very racist guy, basically sent people to infiltrate her circle, get her hooked on drugs, destroy her life, because they had actually asked her directly, stop singing this song because he was racist, right? And she's like, no. Because she wouldn't back down, and she literally sang the song right into the last year of her life, like one of her last film performances. She sang Strange Fruit because she wasn't going to back down from something she knew in her heart was right. She lost her father because of segregated issues. She knew people were still getting lynched in the South, and she couldn't stand by and just let that inhuman like unjust like horror go on. So that's why she gave her life, just to try to make the world a better place. And not many artists can say they did that with a song. For that reason, I gave it its just due at number 2. The final song, number 1, is Big Punisher, or Big Pun, first Latino artist to ever go platinum, and his song, Still Not a Player, featuring Jump. Now, I love this song because it really was a huge hit for Pun. It really helped propel him into vast levels of success that no Latino artist had even reached at that point, never mind rapper. And it even helped anybody in his crew kind of tag along and get on the bandwagon and ride on his like high for a while. Sadly, his career was short lived and he died of a heart attack 2 years after this album. But when he made Capital Punishment, he dropped this song. He was on top of the world. I mean, he had the best beat. He had the smoothest R&B hook ever. Sort of a beautiful concept of not wanting to be a player or be with lots of girls, just wanting to find that one good one and settle down and have it right. And then like being trapped in that lifestyle sometimes just because you live that way, being an artist, being wanted by women, and you're not a player, you just do your thing, and that's how it goes, right? And it's actually a remix of his debut single, I'm Not a Player, which was considered a bit too explicit, right? So he reworked the track with his producer Nobody, and they got Joe to hop on it, remix it with his song Don't Want to Be a Player No More, which had a similar concept, and then they mixed the two together, and it became Still Not a Player. And I mean, he had lots of famous people appear in the video. Video got a lot of play. He was well respected. He was kind of like the Latino king of hip hop, and he is still considered lyrically to be one of the greatest rappers ever. As you hear, even when he appeared on a poppy flow, his lyrics were so phenomenal that he just devoured the competition as far as his rhymes. Like nobody could touch him on the mic, and everybody knew it. Everybody praised him. And I would say he was not only my favorite rapper, but probably my biggest influence on music because he was the one I always strived to be as good as or try to learn as much as I could to be better or in any regards, just strive to aim the way he strived to be as good as he was. And, anyways, since this is the final episode of our show, and this concludes it all, I hope you all really enjoyed this presentation. I hope you will check out these songs, and I hope that you always keep an open mind that there's many good, different kinds of music of all genres, and you never know what you're gonna find. Just keep an open mind. Please keep supporting my songs. Check out the jams. Give your thoughts, opinions, and I'll keep making more music for y'all. We got 4 band albums dropping this year. We got because we already dropped the debut on January 1st, but we also got 2 solo records out of retirement and an album for Shannon, which will come out close to the end of the year, November 5th. A special album dedicated to that lady. Her birthday is November 5th, and I'm so happy because she's actually my Valentine. So hopefully, if things work out, we get to hang out then. Anyways, that concludes our show, though. I hope you all liked it, and please definitely check out the songs. Until we do another presentation or you hear more music, you know I'm always around. Super Kami Guru Alucard. Peace out.